Hey guys, this is Dan with Gears and Gadgets. Thanks for tuning in. This video is long overdue. That is the installation of these King coilovers. It's actually the Superlift 3-inch coilover kit from realtruck.com. I've actually been running this now for a few months, but I wanted to talk about it in terms of this truck. This is a 2024 GMC Sierra AT4. Now the AT4 is actually a factory off-road package. It comes with a 2-inch lift from the factory. So this kit is intended for any of basically the non-AT4 trucks. I want to be clear with this because the installation's slightly different on this truck. It comes with some lifting blocks, things like that, that I did not need to use, and you would theoretically if you do not have an AT4. If you buy this kit with the AT4, expect to only get about a 1-inch lift. This does come with the upper control arms and everything you need to install it. So the install all in, I started this around 1 o'clock in the afternoon and finished around 9 p.m. the same day. So that's 8 hours to do driver, passenger, front and rear, which is super easy. I say this because I did on my 2021 Ford F-150 a 6-inch lift, and that thing took me, well, to be honest with you, a couple weeks where it was up on jack stands because I had an issue with some parts. But even if I had all of that and it worked out perfectly, that still would have been an entire weekend project, because the difference between a 3-inch lift and a 6-inch lift is frame modifications, having to drop the front diff, doing quite a bit more. So with this truck, I actually wanted to go a little more modest with the lift, and that's why I went with this Superlift 3-inch coil lift. I shared in a previous video all of the components that went into this, but I'll link that up above. You can check that out. This is sitting on 35-inch tires. These are Toyo Open Country AT3s, sitting on a Method race wheel. I love the look of it. I actually went from an 18-inch wheel down to a 17 because I just think it looks right on this truck. And I'm a big fan of sidewalls on trucks. I cannot stand 22s on a pickup truck. It just blows my mind because it just doesn't make sense. So I'm going to walk you guys through the install. But before we do, I want to take a moment to thank realtruck.com, who has been supporting this channel for quite a while now. And I have had such a phenomenal relationship with them. I love Real Truck. They have been the most down-to-earth, coolest people to work with on this channel. And those are the kinds of people that I want to work with going forward. So if you could check out realtruck.com, I will link this kit in the description down below, as well as all of the other products that went into completing this look on the truck. So I'm going to walk you through the install kind of at a really high level. If you're going to do this project, I highly recommend, if you don't have a tablet, printing out the instructions and literally going step by step and checking off as you complete each step. The first step is to disconnect the sway bar. Take to Amazon. I'll link this in the description down below. This is a strut socket tool that allows you to get up on the nut, but it has a cutaway, so you can actually get in with an Allen wrench also and hold it to keep it from spinning. You will need that. So once you have that sway bar disconnected, disconnect the tie rod, and then take a moment and go through and just disconnect all of the wire harnesses that are on there. There's a lot of things are connected to that steering knuckle, and you're gonna need those to be disconnected, the bracketry disconnected, to drop that freely. Take some time to just go through and make sure that's all taken care of. Once that's out of the way, you can disconnect the upper control arm ball joint, drop the steering knuckle. It's gonna drop kind of hard. I actually have another separator that I bought from Amazon. I'll link that as well, which comes in really handy. Barely needed to put any pressure on there at all, and then the knuckle drops. So just be prepared to catch that, and then you can just kind of leave it droop. Then you're going to want to remove the OEM coilover, pull that out, the Ranchos, at which point you can then remove the upper control arm. Once that's out of the way, you can install the new upper control arm and then start doing everything in reverse. Installing the new King shocks is always a pleasure, whether it's King or Fox, whatever you guys are running. When you're putting that new coilover in there, the Bilsteins, whatever it is, it's just such a good feeling. So you're going to reinstall that coilover, torque everything down to spec. I'm going to include a link to a much cheaper torque wrench than what I'm using. I'm using the Harbor Freight Icon torque wrench, which costs quite a bit of money. I bought it because I find myself doing so many of these projects now that having a really nice torque wrench comes in handy, but there's much cheaper options out there. I will link those in the description down below as well. Once you get that coilover all torqued down, you can reinstall the knuckle to the upper control arm, grease that new ball joint, which you do not want to forget that step, and then you can move on to installing the reservoir bracket. Now, I'm working around these Talons Garage skid plates. I love these skid plates. If you don't have them, they're not going to be in the way, but this does all work with the Talons Garage skid plate as well. Now, this being the AT4, there was a cut that I had to make on the bracket that holds up the King Shock reservoir. It was kind of interfering with a piece of the frame member. I just cut a 45-degree angle, and then it fit perfectly after that. Tighten down your brackets, and then everything's done. Button it all up. Just make sure that when you're doing these projects, you go through, check torque, or mark things with a pen for your ball joints, your tie rod arms, the sway bars. Make sure that everything is tight, and then you can go ahead and put the tire back on and move over to the passenger side, rinse and repeat. Now, rear shocks on trucks are super simple. You can see what I did here was jacked up the truck and just put the whole back end up on the jack stands. You're just disconnecting 2 bolts, top, bottom, pulling out the old shock, repeating that same process to install the new shock. And then the hardest part is just monkeying with the bracketry to get that reservoir mounted on the frame rail and trimming off the excess of the liner that goes on the inside of the wheel well. So that's kind of the hardest part. That whole rear end thing is pretty simple. Again, to do this whole process took me about 8 hours by myself in the garage. Now, I've got quite a bit of experience now doing these projects. I've done quite a few of them. And with that, you know, I expect to spend, I would say, 8 to 12 hours, somewhere in that range, maybe doing a project like this, but pretty easy. So in terms of tire fitment, this kit, they say that they recommend running a maximum of a 33-inch tire. I wanted to run 35s, and I was going to make that happen. So I got these 35-inch tires, and immediately I started dealing with some rub. These trucks with these square wheel wells are kind of a pain in the ass when it comes to fitting a 35-inch tire, but it can be done, not without some persuasion. There are some companies out there that sell some kits to pull back the wheel liners and all that stuff, but I just went in there with some zip ties and got really creative. I also bought myself a new hammer and started kind of wailing away at some things to persuade it. And I'm at the point now where it pretty much fits. Up until yesterday, I'm not sure, I don't have enough miles on it yet, but I did go in yesterday and put 3 twists on the coilovers to preload that strut a little bit more and bring it up. I was only able with those 3 turns to pick it up like a 1/2 inch. I'm gonna actually do more. That'll be in another video, probably next week. I just bought the craziest spring compressor to use. I'm gonna pull these shocks off and actually, I'm gonna adjust these things up and pick the front end up probably about another inch. With that, I expect to have no rubbing. The only rubbing that I was getting with these 35s was coming into my driveway. There's a little concrete gutter at the road. So when I come in and hit the driveway, with the wheel turn and hitting that bump, it would cause a slight rub. And now that this spring is actually preloaded a little bit more, I'm pretty sure that'll stop. Now, I know a lot of you guys are gonna say, well, what about wheel spacers? I tried the wheel spacers. I actually ordered some, installed them. It rubbed worse. The thing with wheel spacers is that, yeah, you push the tire out, but the geometry changes. It still caused a rubbing issue, so I pulled those wheel spacers out. I hate wheel spacers. I think they're pretty sketchy. You can get them hub-centric, which I did order. Do not order non-hub-centric wheel spacers. That's even more sketchy, but being that it was still rubbing, I just pulled those back out and decided not to run with them. You can fit the 35s, it works. I also just replaced the spare tire, which you can fit a 35-inch, nothing bigger, underneath the rear of the truck. I've got months now on this kit. For what these kits are, I think a suspension upgrade on a pickup truck, whether you're doing hardcore off-roading or not, there is much more than just looking cool that goes into these things. Having way more sidewall is a huge, huge benefit to the ride quality in these trucks. I'm super stoked with it. So with that said, again, I will have another video coming up here in the near future with this obnoxious spring compressor that I just picked up, adjusting these things and really getting them dialed in. But I'm also doing this because I'm going to service these shocks myself. When you start looking at buying an off-road shock package like this, there are some maintenance costs that come with it, some things that a shop might charge you $300-400 every time you go in to do that, and that's saying you remove everything yourself. So if I'm going to go through the process of removing shocks in my garage and taking them somewhere and spending $300-400 to get them serviced, I might as well just buy this tool and do it myself. That's the way that I've always viewed DIY wrenching. Any of the tools you buy to do it once, you have for the rest of your life. I still have tools that I've had since I was 18 years old. So invest in yourself. So with that said, again, I will link everything in the description down below. I want to thank realtruck.com. And most importantly, I want to thank you guys, because without you guys, none of this content would be even something I would be doing. So super enjoy the channel here and the opportunity you guys give me to do this really rad stuff. So with that said, thank you very much for tuning in. If this is your first time tuning in, please hit that subscribe button down below. Remember, likes go a long way to help support the channel. I will see you guys next time.